Some mysteries are never solved, some encounters leave behind more questions than answers, and sometimes what you see isn't what you think it is. These are 4 terrifying horror stories that will make you question reality itself. In 2011, my colleague and I worked night shifts in Hyderabad. Every night we took a cab home around 1 to 3 a.m. His house was deep in a developing village, surrounded by dark, endless paddy fields. Even our cab driver hated going there. One night, my colleague rode his bike home alone at 3 a.m. As he turned onto the narrow village road, he saw an old, isolated house. Loud wailing came from inside, women crying in agony, but when he looked closer, the house was empty. He sped up, heart pounding. That's when he saw her. A woman in a tattered white sari walking from the fields onto the road. She stopped, looked directly at him, then, silently, walked away. The next night, our cab driver and I were talking about the incident when, screech, the driver slammed the brakes. She was there, standing in the middle of the road, her matted hair swaying as she curled her fingers through it. She clutched old, ragged clothes, her lips twisting into a smile. The moment we stopped, she ran toward us. We screamed. The driver threw the car into reverse. She chased us, sprinting at an unnatural speed. In a panic, he honked the horn. She suddenly turned and vanished into the fields. The villagers? They had lived there for decades and never seen her, except at night, alone. 7 years ago, I received a strange invitation to a dinner party from my cousin. Odd thing was, I had never met him before, only spoken to him on the phone. His family had never reached out before. The address wasn't on GPS. I had to rely on an old map to find my way. As I drove, civilization faded. Endless trees, empty farms. The silence was suffocating. Finally, I reached the house. It looked wrong, dull, dead. The walls were choked with vines, branches curling around like nature itself was trying to bury it. A smiling couple stepped outside. My supposed aunt and uncle. They were warm, welcoming. I let my guard down. We talked, played Uno, and I devoured their delicious homemade pot roast. But as the night deepened, my cousin never arrived. I decided to leave. My GPS was useless, so I asked for directions to the highway. Their expressions changed. I thought you were staying the night. I explained I had work. Their smiles stiffened. You'll get lost if you leave now. It's better if you stay. Trust me. My heart pounded. Their voices weren't pleading. They were insisting. I forced a chuckle. I'll be fine. Their expressions darkened. Stay. Panic surged in my chest. Pretending to give in, I sighed. All right, fine. Relief flooded their faces. We'll get your bed ready, my uncle said, walking down the hall. The second they turned their backs, I ran. Jumping into my car, I sped away. The trees loomed taller. Shadows stretched like fingers trying to drag me back. By the time I reached home, it was past 11. I didn't want to wake my parents, so I climbed the fence and slipped through the back door, only to freeze. The kitchen light was on. My mother sat at the table, arms crossed. "Where were you?" she asked. "At Aunt Deborah's," I said, confused. "You knew this." Her face darkened. "Then why did she call, saying you never arrived?" I felt my blood run cold. To this day, I don't know who I spent that evening with. It started with a mirror. I had just moved into a new apartment, an old building with a strange energy. The previous tenant had left behind a tall antique mirror in the bedroom. It was too heavy to move, so I left it. The first night, I noticed something off. My reflection seemed delayed, like it moved a fraction of a second too late. The second night, I saw something else, a shadow in the glass standing behind me. I spun around. Nothing. By the third night, I was terrified. I avoided looking at the mirror altogether, but deep down I could feel it. Something was there. Then I woke up to a whisper. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it at the mirror. My reflection was gone. Instead, a tall man stood there. Hollow, sunken eyes, a smile that wasn't human. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he smiled wider. I blacked out. When I woke up, it was morning. The mirror was back to normal. My reflection was there. But something was wrong. I don't smile like that. And sometimes, when I look at the mirror, I swear that smile still lingers, waiting. It was past midnight when my shift ended. No buses, no options. I had to take a taxi. A black cab rolled up. The windows were heavily tinted, the driver barely visible. Too tired to care, I got in and gave my address. The car smelled strange. Old damp wood. The seats felt worn, like they had been used for decades. The driver said nothing. No music, no radio, just silence. As we drove, I noticed something. We weren't on the right route. The streets were darker, unfamiliar. "Hey, this isn't the right way," I said. No response. I leaned forward. "Sir, I think you took a wrong..." I saw it. The rearview mirror. There was no driver. The seat was empty. Yet the steering wheel turned. The car kept moving. A slow, raspy voice whispered, "You should have never gotten in." Everything went black. I woke up in an alley, miles from my home. My wallet, phone, everything was untouched. But when I checked my call log, there was one outgoing call at exactly 3 a.m. to a number I didn't recognize. I never called it back. And sometimes when I'm alone at night, I see that black car parked across the street, waiting for me.